Hello and welcome to the fiscal year 2021 City of Bowling Green annual budget presentation. I'm Jeff Meisel, City Manager. With me today I have our budget team made up of Katie Schaller-Ward, our Assistant City Manager and Chief Financial Officer, Aaron Holsey, our Human Resources Director, Aaron Ballou, our Assistant CFO over Accounting, and Sean Weeks, our Assistant CFO over Revenues. We are here today to present to you the budget in a little different way. In a normal year, we would have presented this budget to the Board of Commissioners at a regular meeting in mid-May, but we have chosen to deliver this by video this year in order to allow us more time to compose the budget and get a handle on where we will finish the current year, as well as to meet COVID-19 guidelines. I would like to thank all of the budget team members along with all of the department heads, senior managers, staff, division heads, and everyone that has worked on the city budget this year. 2020 has certainly been a challenging year so far, but through it all, everyone has worked together and we have helped wherever is needed. Although we had closed our doors in March, the city has remained in operation throughout the COVID global pandemic and the state of emergency. But all of our departments have remained open and provided services in alternative ways like many other organizations and businesses. We have continued to meet the needs of citizens with reduced in-office staff levels recommended by Governor Beshear by social distancing, teleworking, rotating in-person schedules, assisting citizens over the phone, online, and other alternative methods have all been utilized to protect the public and city staff from the coronavirus. There have certainly been some difficult decisions that had to be made during these last 3 months that have affected everyone. This FY21 budget process was no different. In my 18 years of working on city budgets, this one may have been my hardest budget to figure out yet due to the global pandemic and the economic uncertainty that's still ahead. Hard decisions had to be made on the operating and capital budgets. Each line in the budget was dissected and scrutinized even more this year. Revenues were analyzed with never-before-used techniques to analyze the damage done during a 6-week period in order to make projections for a 13-month period, June, and the 12 months of FY21. Normal funding to annual projects and programs had to be decreased or eliminated, and this budget is only a starting point. There could be adjustments needed later if circumstances change using the means of budget amendments during FY21. Most of the PowerPoint slides you're getting ready to see in this budget presentation will focus on the general fund, our main operating fund. I will turn it over to Sean Weeks in just a few minutes to cover revenues and talk about how we approach the projections on the major revenue sources. Katie will then cover the general fund expenditures and all fund expenditure budgets to discuss some of the decreases that had to be made. Aaron Holsey will follow Katie with the personnel portion of the budget and discuss our recommendations on our biggest expenditure category, personnel. Aaron Ballou will then follow Aaron Holsey to cover capital improvement project recommendations along with some information on fund balance. The first reading of the budget is planned for the June 16th BOC meeting. Between now and then, questions can be emailed to myself, Katie, or any member of the budget team. I will now turn it over to Sean Weeks, Assistant CFO.
Mayor and Commissioners, I would like to present the FY21 revenue budget. A lot of care is always taken when it comes to crafting the revenue budget each year. Extra attention was focused on gathering as much information available to take the best approach when projecting revenues this year, taking into account COVID-19. This includes webinars, articles, and conferring with peers from other municipalities as to what approach they were taking, as well as a new, deeper approach on different business sectors from our own figures to determine the impact on each. This process helps with setting the expenditure budget. It also provides a margin of error during the year by selecting a conservative method to account for the effects of COVID-19. Portions of the revenue budget are based on 9 months of actual revenue that is projected out for the final 3 months, where it is determined that COVID-19 would not be much of a factor. Essentially, in those cases, this is the estimate of where the city will finish the year out, plus any possible sustainable growth in a few areas such as property taxes. We're going to focus on the revenue portion of the table. Revenues for all funds is projected at approximately $110.3 million, a 9.7% decrease compared to FY20 adopted budget of $122.2 million. General fund revenue, including golf and aquatics, comes in at $66.9 million, or a 7.4% decrease versus FY20 adopted budget. Some background on the effects of COVID-19 on all funds revenues. Occupational fees are projecting to have a $6.6 million, or 12.2% decrease from the FY20 adopted budget. License and permits are expecting to have a $252,000, or 17.3% decrease, and transfers in are anticipating a $4.8 million, or 28.9% reduction versus FY20 adopted budget, which relate to capital project funding, debt service, and tax district revenue distributions. All of this is to say that we project FY20 general fund revenues to finish around $73.9 million, which translates to a 9.5% reduction projected for FY21. The budget has been conservatively set based on COVID-19 effects on the main general fund revenue source of occupational fees to be discussed in a few slides. I want to note that the negative shown on this page is not deficit spending, but use of funds earmarked for capital projects both now and in the future. When looking at comparison of all funds by revenue type, the tax portion includes property taxes and insurance premium taxes both in the general and fire improvement fund. Occupational fees are represented by the general fund, Parks Improvement Fund, which is also known as the Heartland Plan Community, and the Job Development Fund. License and permits refers to building, plan review, and electrical permits. Intergovernmental encompasses grants across multiple funds like Transit, Housing Choice Voucher Program, CDBG, Liquid Fuel, and others. The majority of the fees are represented by WKU reimbursement for Digital Arena bonds. I would like to note that we've never been out any funds since we are reimbursed for those costs. Under charges for services, fleet lease rates are the fleet division charges each division for maintenance and also cemetery receipts. Parks and Rec encompasses the general parks, golf, and aquatics. Miscellaneous can include health insurance premiums, interest earned, police and fire pension earnings, contributions, donations, and rental income. I would also like to note that 2 of the 4 largest percentage changes, occupational fees and license and permits, occur mostly in the general fund and will be discussed shortly. The 100% reduction in notes, bonds, proceeds is due to the issuance of a FY20 capital lease in the fire capital fund for 2 new fire apparatuses with no such leases in FY21, and the 28.9% decrease in transfers in is a reflection of reduction of revenues available for pre-funding capital projects. I'd like to note that the all funds revenue drivers are occupational fees at 42.8%, taxes at 19.1%, and transfers in and miscellaneous revenues tied at 10.8%. For the general fund, withholdings and net profits encompass 66.1%, and property and insurance premium taxes at 26.5%. Also, occupational fees had been at or above 70% since FY 2011. In FY15, golf and aquatics was added to the general fund, which provided the jump in growth. From FY15 through FY20, adjusted budget shows steady growth, with FY20 adjusted revenue budget being the highest point at $73.7 million, and FY21 reflecting the adjustment of the revenues to match expected collections at $66.9 million due to COVID-19. 2011 is when the effect of the recession was at its lowest point. Starting in 2012, continued growth showed through FY20, with the exception of FY18, which had flat revenue growth. Estimated growth for FY20 is at 1.7%, with an average increase of 4.5% for total revenues through FY20. FY21 is projecting a 9.5% decrease, with the effects of COVID-19 applied. For occupational receipts, a 4.2% average increase for actual revenues occurred through FY20, with FY20 projected at a 1.2% gain. Our budget for total property taxes reflect growth of 8.4% over FY20 adopted budget, also stated at 1.9% over FY20 estimated actual collections. This growth is based on changes in assessments for real property from the first recap provided by the Warren County Property Value Administrator, which is subject to change and state approval. also growth in annexed areas, and new development added to the tax roll. Property taxes include real, personal, also known as tangible, which can include inventory and equipment, motor vehicle, franchise, and payments in lieu of taxes, also known as pilot taxes. Other taxes increased by 12% over FY20 adopted budget, which relates to insurance premium, bank franchise, and telecommunication franchise taxes, which were small growth. Growth for employee withholdings from FY11 at $29.1 million to estimated actual collections for FY20 at $41.8 million, total at 43.6% gain over the 10-year period. The high water mark of $42.2 million was the result of a growing economy for Bowling Green businesses during FY 2019, with FY20 estimates just shy of that due to the final 3 months of COVID-19 related closures. The low water mark of $29.1 million was the result of recession on withholdings for businesses from 2011. The recommended FY21 budget of $36.2 million is between the FY15 and FY16 actual collections in projected total. Growth for net profits from FY11 at $6.3 million to estimated actual collections for FY20 at $9.2 million, total a 46% increase over the 10-year period. The high watermark of $10.9 million was the result of large net profits for Bowling Green businesses from 2016 reported in FY 2017. The low watermark of $6.2 million was the result of recession on net profits for businesses for 2011 reported in FY 2012. The recommended FY21 budget of $8 million is similar to FY 16 and FY 19 in projected total. The largest source of general fund revenues consists of net profits and employee wage withholdings. The budget decrease reflects a 12.2% decline versus FY20 adopted budget, or a 13.2% decrease versus projected FY20 estimates overall. Due to COVID-19, the due dates for net profits was moved from April 15th to July 15th, which crosses over 2 fiscal years. In order to project the most accurate net profit revenues, past recession impacts were applied to currently known and projected figures from FY19 and FY20, resulting in a 12.6% decline compared with the FY20 adopted budget, or a 12.7% reduction versus the FY20 estimated actual figures. In order to properly project the most up-to-date and accurate figures for the employee wage withholding fees, a new report and comparison chart was created by the city's business tax auditor to assist in examining the top 25 business sectors and their respective effects of COVID-19. The result was a weighted average approach which allowed for a conservative projections across a full year, taking into account the slowly reopening economy and a possible reemergence of COVID-19 during the next budget year, for a total reduction to withholdings of 12.1% versus the FY20 adopted budget, or 13.3% compared to the FY20 estimated actual figure. License and permits for FY20 estimated actuals are projected to finish 19.9% behind the FY20 adopted budget due to lower than expected building and plan review permits, with electrical permits actuals estimated to produce a 15.6% growth over FY20 budget figures. FY21 is a modest 3.4% growth over FY20 estimated actuals, but a 17.2% decline versus the FY20 adopted budget. Grants in FY21 typically are related to county reimbursements for the Lover Lane Soccer Complex, which finished in FY20. All other grants are budgeted in special revenue funds or are added through the budget amendments during the fiscal year. The spike in FY20 estimated actuals relates to year 2 of 3 of the SAFER grant, towards 75% reimbursement for the 9 fire personnel, brownfields assessment grant funding, and a fire training facilities grant for a mobile ventilation prop. Carry forward budget of SAFER grant for year 3 of 3 in FY21 and any other balances not received will occur. Charges for services refer to cemetery receipts, school tax collection fees, and cost recovery fees for public safety. The 3.6% increase for FY21 recommended revenues versus the FY20 adopted figures relates primarily to school tax collection fees of which the city receives 2% of school property tax collections remitted back by the city schools. The minimal projected gain of 1.6% to Parks and Rec is a projected growth from youth basketball, gains for golf, particularly for a full open year of the Hobson Golf Course and new driving range, netted against summer program cancellations due to COVID-19. Miscellaneous revenues can include interest earned, rental income, sale of equipment through GovDeal's website, parking tickets, contributions and donations, and judgments and settlements. The 25.4% decline versus FY20 adopted budget and 34.3% compared with FY20 estimated actuals directly relates to the current investment market due to COVID-19 and its effects on interest income for investments. Transfers in refers to golf's apportionment of the Heartland Plan Community, also referred to as the Parks Development Fund. To recap, we are projecting a 7.4% decrease in the FY21 recommended general fund revenue budget versus FY20 adopted, or, looking at it another way, a 9.5% decrease versus FY20 estimated actuals, which is the direct result of COVID-19's negative effect on projected revenues, most notably in net profits, wage withholdings, permits, and interest earnings. I will now turn it over to Katie Schaller-Ward to speak on expenditures. Thank you.
In turning our attention to the expenditure side of the equation, you can see the recommended budget is less than the FY 2020 adopted budget for all funds and general fund. This is the second consecutive year for a recommendation to reduce the budget. However, each year is due to different reasons. For FY 2020, it was a recalibration of our revenues, and for FY 21, it is the impacts of the coronavirus. For all funds, we propose to decrease the expenses by just over $10.4 million, or 8.4%, and use almost $3.9 million of previously saved money to balance the all funds expenditure budget for capital projects and purchases. For the seventh consecutive year, we do not propose to use any fund balance in the general fund. Just like revenues, expenses will be approximately $5.3 million, or 7.4% less in the fiscal year 21 compared to the fiscal year 2020 budget. The fiscal year 2020 adjusted expenditure budget includes carryovers and capital projects and open purchase orders from the previous year. We project to finish this year below $77 million in general fund expenses. As just stated, when comparing the fiscal year 2021 all funds recommended budget to the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget, total expenses will be down. By looking more closely at the different expenditure categories, this approximate $10.4 million decrease is reflected in most expense types. Personnel only involves a slight increase of $209,000 and will be discussed in more detail in just a few minutes. The net $908,660 increase in contractual services is related in part to increases in transit administrative services now that the local match is no longer included in subsidies, increases in paid claims for prescription, dental, and vision in the healthcare fund, increases to the vehicle maintenance fee charged off to all departmental budgets, and capital projects. The almost $1.2 million decrease in supplies directly relates to a reduction in non-essential operating and maintenance costs, particularly related to parks programming, which is expected to be impacted this summer due to the coronavirus and possibly through the remainder of this calendar year. A reduction in fuel costs and the removal of one-time small asset purchases included in the fiscal year 2020 budget for the upfitting of new vehicles and fire trucks, the furnishings of the new Lovers Lane Fire Station, replacing police MDCs, and for costs associated with the 9 new police and fire positions added in fiscal year 2020. The $339,000 decrease in subsidies is primarily from moving the city's local match for transit services to a transfer out to the Public Transit Special Revenue Fund. The almost $3.3 million decrease in property and fixed assets is directly related to fewer capital purchases recommended for fiscal year 2021. The nearly $1.4 million decrease in debt service will be discussed later in the presentation. Of the nearly $5.4 million decrease in transfers out, The majority of it comes from a $4.1 million reduction in general fund transfers out for capital projects, as well as a reduction to transfers out to support debt service obligations from the general fund, the job development fund, and the fire improvement fund. Excluding capital items, the all funds operating budget is down 1.6% or $1.7 million compared to the fiscal year 2020 operating budget, standing at just under $100.4 million. As shown on these pie charts, public safety expenditures make up 31.2% of the all funds budget and 47% of the general fund budget. The other departments combined account for 46.6%, with the balance of 22.2% coming from the other line items. For general fund, the other departments combined account for 38.1%. And transfers out, debt service, intergovernmental, agency services, and contingency make up the remaining amount of 14.9%. This graph reflects total adopted budget amounts for the past few years. In fiscal year 2015, we incorporated golf and aquatics into the general fund. The rise from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 20 is mostly reflective of the city's capital improvement program, with our highest budget mark in fiscal year 2019 at $74.1 million. As the expenditure budget is prepared, staff takes into consideration historical trends, actual needs, and other factors to determine the most appropriate costs, reducing budgets and extracting savings when feasible and practical. This year, we had to take that a step further, and several non-essential budgetary reductions provided by each department also had to be made to help balance the budget. When you take into account the projected revenues as previously presented, the fiscal year 21 recommended general fund expenditure budget covers all operating costs and proposes to include a modest capital improvement program without impacting fund balance. Since the general fund accounts for 58.6% of the all funds budget, a review of the recommended general fund expenditures is presented in more detail on the following slides. With personnel expenses contributing to 67.6% of the fiscal year 2021 general fund, this graph reflects how slowly personnel expenses have grown over the past several years compared to the actual total expenses. However, with the addition of 35 new public safety positions in the past 10 years and at least 2 years, fiscal years 19 and 20, of a 12% increase each year in CERS rates, personnel expenses were expected to rise. Fortunately, we have held personnel costs in check despite providing cost of living and step adjustments, as well as added a few other non-public safety positions through the years. This has been accomplished through the natural attrition and by examining every job vacancy to determine if it is still valid, combining jobs, retooling positions, eliminating positions, and holding non-public safety positions vacant for a period of time before filling, all of which has been done when it is feasible and appropriate to do so through the years. Again, with personnel being the largest expense type, this chart breaks down the various components which make up personnel expenses and reflects a 0.6% increase overall for fiscal year 21 compared to the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. Again, this is for general fund only. The primary reason for the increase in hazardous CERS and other personnel costs is due to having a full year of the 3 additional firefighter positions included in the budget this year versus only having been budgeted at 50% in fiscal year 2020. Additional details about the contributing factors behind personnel changes will be presented shortly. Other personnel costs include the employer's portion of medical, dental, vision, life, and health benefit insurance premiums, and workers' compensation and unemployment expenses. Total other benefits is primarily tuition reimbursement, cell phone stipends, and EMT recertification reimbursements. This year, the cell phone stipend amounts were increased by $10 per month, and tuition reimbursement was decreased based on actual trending, providing a net reduction of $7,693. All non-personnel expenditures are down primarily due to reductions in non-essential operating costs to help balance the budget. Contractuals are more specifically down from reductions in travel and training, local meetings, repairs, advertising, postage and freight, special events, utilities, construction, and roadwork. A portion of the reduction in utilities is related to the realization that the aquatics programming may be impacted for the rest of this calendar year, and reductions in construction and roadwork are from the removal of FY2020 capital projects. A portion of the reduction in supplies comes from the park's summer camp programs and aquatics program, which are being impacted this calendar year by the coronavirus restrictions. And virtually every line item that makes up supplies has been reduced for FY2021. The reduction in subsidies is related to changing the local match for transit services to a transfer out this year, as well as a reduction in the local match budgeted for airport grant improvements. There are simply fewer capital purchases proposed for fiscal year 21, which reduced the fixed assets. Miscellaneous is primarily general fund contingency. We'd like to have at least 1% of our budget represented in contingency for any unforeseen expenses that come up each year. As previously mentioned, the majority of the reduction in transfer out is a direct result of less general fund support toward capital improvement projects and purchases, and a reduction in general fund supported debt service for fiscal year 2021. Included in the subsidies and assistance category are the city's 10 eligible agencies which provide services on behalf of the city. The recommendation regarding funding for these agencies in the coming year is to keep most agencies at the same level of funding as fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. In light of having to make reductions to several departmental budgets, it did not seem appropriate to increase the subsidies for agencies this coming year. Additionally, there are a few other items which go along with agency funding. For the past several years, the city has traditionally provided a dollar-for-dollar match of employee pledges to United Way. This year's amount reflects a match of those pledges for which an employee did not receive any other city benefit, which is a $15 reduction from the fiscal year 2020 budget. Once again, we propose to include $10,000 for the expansion or upgrading of the outdoor warning system for this within the city limits. And finally, the city is required to provide 2.5% of a local match for any FAA grants received by the Regional Airport Board. And this year's improvement project is for the reconstruction design of the terminal apron. This year's proposed improvement project match is 98% less than the amount included in the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. With these additions to the recommended amount included on the previous slide, agency funding represents 1.7% of the general fund expenditures for fiscal year 2021. Excluding capital expenditures, the fiscal year 2021 general fund operating budget reflects a decrease of 1.6% or $1.1 million, standing at $65.6 million for the fiscal year 2021. Human Resources Director Erin Halsey will now present the proposed personnel changes in more detail.
In FY2020, the total budget impact of recommended changes was $5 million over all funds. For FY21, the recommended budget impact is less than $1 million across all funds. The freeze on CERS contribution rates, no changes to the healthcare fund, and a significant reduction in the cost of new positions and reclassifications are the main contributors to the difference year over year. We want to be fiscally responsible in our plans for personnel management while continuing our goal of being an employer of choice for South Central Kentucky. The City of Bowling Green highly values its employees that serve our community, and we've made every effort to be fair to employees during the pandemic while also preparing for decreased revenues. In the next few slides, I will go over our recommendation for the FY21 COLA increase, merit increase, reclassifications, the new wage schedule, new positions, as well as an overview of our fringe benefits, mainly the healthcare fund and CERS. For years, the city has managed to keep a gap between the city's largest source of revenue, occupational fees, and the city's largest expense, personnel services. Due to COVID-19, we are expecting reduced revenues from occupational fees, but we are also expecting some savings on personnel expenses. Without COVID, both our revenues and expenses would have been higher. Due to our conservative approach in FY21, it could be that this is the first year that personnel service expenses exceed our revenues from occupational fees. The Department of Local Government Consumer Price Index, which is the reference base the city historically uses to evaluate cost of living adjustments, was 2.3% at the end of December 2019. Therefore, as we have historically done, we are recommending all full-time employees receive a cost of living adjustment of 2.3%, including the city manager and elected officials. Each full-time pay schedule starting wage is also being recommended for an adjustment of 2.3%. This includes the general schedule, department head schedule, and both pay schedules for police and fire. With a conservative approach to revenues next year, and in light of the current economic impact of COVID-19, we are recommending to suspend the merit increase program. Protecting city employee wages has been a high priority of the City Board of Commissioners and senior management team. In the last 3 months, we have been flexible with employees by implementing alternating schedules, work from home policies, and supported employees with childcare needs. We are not proposing layoffs or furloughs at this time. While many may be disappointed about this decision, we know that this supports the city's fiscal goals while providing high-quality employment and job security. Our strategy for the part-time employees of the city is consistent with that of the full-time employees. We are recommending a 25-cent increase in pay for current part-time employees to cover cost of living expenditures while suspending the merit increase program. The part-time schedule will also increase by 25 cents. There are 11 position changes being recommended for FY21. 9 job classifications are on Schedule G. 2 reclassifications are on the part-time schedule. These 2 part-time adjustments are not changing any position titles, but simply moving personnel to a consistent classification for the job of tennis instructor. This is just a cleanup. The financial impact is negligible. Of the 9 full-time reclassifications, 5 are from reorganizations of the Finance Department and Parks and Recreation Maintenance Division. There were several retirements in these departments this spring of long-serving employees. These employees earned a salary at the high end of their grade. When replacing them, the new employees start at the beginning of the pay schedule for their grade, therefore resulting in labor dollar savings. We would like to take advantage of those savings by recommending 3 upgrades in finance and 2 upgrades in parks. The other 4 reclassifications are in the Human Resources and Risk Management, Neighborhood and Community Services, Police, and Public Works departments. We also looked at many part-time positions and reviewed the history of hours worked and the ability to fill positions. We are recommending additional efficiencies by adjusting some FTEs of part-time positions, and we are eliminating 2 part-time positions. The budget for FY20 includes 10 new part-time positions. 6 positions are in Parks Athletics to cover the expansion of our youth basketball program. As mentioned earlier in the section about revenue, most expenses from these programs may be offset by revenues from registration fees. 4 positions in the golf division are being added to reduce reliance on volunteers. We currently operate with about 10 seasonal volunteers, and while we are grateful for their service to the city, they do not handle money in the pro shops. We would like to reduce our reliance on volunteers by adding these new positions. An added benefit will be that we can ensure compliance of state labor statutes on employee breaks. In late winter, we applied for a grant to add 4 new police officers to our city's police department. If named a recipient, we had planned to create a traffic enforcement unit that would be responsible for increased enforcement and mitigating collisions. The first week of June, we found out that the city was not selected as a recipient for the grant. Adding the 4 new positions is part of a 6-year staffing plan presented by the police chief, and FY21 is the second year of the plan, having added 5 additional positions in FY20. While we applied for the grant, we had not intended to budget for the positions, as supplanting funds for positions is not allowed by the terms of the grant. The department had not planned to start these new personnel until March of 2021. Considering that we are not getting grant funding and not budgeting for the positions at this time, we intend to watch the performance of our revenues to determine if the city can still afford to add these positions with a budget amendment in the 3rd or 4th quarter of FY21. In the last 10 years, the city's workforce has grown by 10%, while the city's population has grown closer to 20%. The city has been very careful when adding staff. In the last 10 years, we've added 73 new positions. 40 of those new positions have been in either police, dispatch, or the fire departments. This graph does not include the 4 police officer positions that may be added later in FY21 based on funding. A few recent bills have aided cities and counties of the Commonwealth in their quest to get some relief from the exponential increase to required contributions to the retirement system. House Bill 249 hit the pause button on the 12% increase scheduled to go in effect for FY21 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and unknown financial effects to local governments. This saved our city $1.1 million. In addition, it reset the amortization period, which gives us hope that we may get some relief in the future from the increased contributions that are growing at exponential rates. This spring, House Bill 484 passed. While cities and counties were hoping for a full separation of CERS and KRS, this gives CERS an independent board of trustees to manage, administer, and make future decisions for CERS. This board will begin their administration of CERS next spring. While the Healthcare Fund has seen a lot of changes in the last year, the FY21 budget is being presented as a balanced budget with no changes for premiums to the city or employees. The new reference-based plan, which started on 1/1 of this calendar year, is trending to save the city approximately $1 million, and only 60% of the employees merged onto this new plan. If we can get more employees to select this plan for the 2021 calendar year, the savings in the second half of the fiscal year will be greater. The new prescription benefit manager, which the city started with on 1/1 of this calendar year, anticipates a possible $250,000 of additional savings due to an increase in rebates of the closed formulary we selected to use. Despite the increase in plan costs in FY20, we hope the changes we made will result in a reduction in claims significant enough to steady the fund in this fiscal year. The graph shows the breakdown of personnel expenditures by department of all funds on the left and the general fund on the right. In summary, the budget for the general fund for personnel services is $45.2 million, or 67% of the entire general fund budget. This year, we have been saved by a $1.1 million increase in retirement contribution funds, temporarily suspended the merit increase program for a savings of $440,000, reduced labor hours in parks due to the closure of aquatics and athletics by $200,000, have adopted changes to the healthcare fund that should save over $1 million. I would now like to introduce Assistant Chief Financial Officer Aaron Ballou to review the city's capital improvement program.
The city's Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, is the annual plan of project expenditures for public facilities and infrastructure. It shows estimated costs and sources of funding for all city projects costing over $25,000 with an estimated useful life of at least 5 years. In FY2021, the CIP budget totals nearly $20.6 million. This includes $9.7 million for debt service payments, which has been decreasing each year, and $1.2 million of general fund support. Although debt is decreasing, the percent of debt-related CIP did rise to 47.2% for FY2021 due to a decrease in overall program spending from the $25.8 million budget last year. The primary cause for this $5.2 million decrease in the CIP budget from last year is the impact of COVID-19 on revenue projections and the ability to present a balanced general fund budget. Only $1.2 million of CIP is being funded by the general fund. This is down from $4.8 million last year and $10.8 million that was provided in the 2019 budget. The remaining non-debt CIP is being provided by general fund underspending that was captured in prior years and then transferred to capital project funds. That amounts to over $9.6 million in the FY21 budget. Even in this uncertain year, it is important to point out that the CIP program still outpaces the low point in FY10 by 33.8%, or $5.2 million. The CIP budget includes $10.9 million in new project spending for FY21. This is categorized into 4 strategic plan goals: municipal facilities and equipment, community livability, traffic and roads, and technology improvements. The largest slices of CIP spending are dedicated to traffic and roads and community livability at 57% and 28.4% respectively. I'll review the recommended capital improvement program projects on the next several slides, and more detailed information on each is found in your budget books in Appendix E. Community livability is a strategic plan goal that seeks to enhance the quality of life in the local community through strong neighborhoods, walkable spaces, and recreational offerings. The FY21 Capital Improvement Plan budget allocates $3.1 million to this goal. Of this total, $100,000 is again budgeted for sidewalk reconstruction. The primary focus of this program in FY21 will be to replace existing sidewalks to eliminate trip hazards and improve ADA compliance. Since 2011, 4.5 miles of sidewalk have been resurfaced or reconstructed through this program. More recently, over 1,700 feet of sidewalk was reconstructed on Butler Way near Dishman-McGinnis. New for FY21 is the Greenways Expansion Construction Program. $150,000 is being allocated in this program's first year to close gaps in the city's multi-use path network. A prioritization system will be implemented much like the existing sidewalk model to guide where these investments will be made. The Stormwater Mitigation Program has a budget of $250,000 for FY21. This program was created in response to the 2010 flooding and addresses a prioritized list of backlogged stormwater projects. Since inception, almost $5.5 million has been allocated and 20 projects have been completed. 4 projects are currently pending construction, including the Kenton Street drainage improvements. The Parks and Recreation Community Livability projects are highlighted by the second year of the Crosswinds Golf Bunker replacement. This golf course was constructed in 1993 and houses 41 sand bunkers. 25 bunkers were budgeted for replacement in FY20 for $250,000. The remaining 16 are budgeted in FY21. New for FY21 is the Riverfront Park Development Project. This project will provide a wide range of improvements to the riverfront area, including a pedestrian bridge and pass, restrooms, fishing platforms, and a disc golf course. The city is contributing $1.5 million for this project, which will be supplemented by an additional $750,000 in federal grant funds. The 3 other parks and recreation projects listed here are detailed in Appendix E in your budget books. The BG Reinvestment Area Neighborhood Improvement Project completes the community livability goal with an FY21 budget of almost $725,000. This is comprised of $200,000 in the general fund and almost $525,000 from CDBG federal grant funds. This program was approved as part of the city's 5-year consolidated plan in 2014. The current target area began receiving funding last year and encompasses an area from Old Morgantown Road to Morgantown Road, which is census blocks 103.3 and 103.4. The focus of this area will be private property, with funds dedicated to support a private property improvement program and new housing opportunities, with the remaining funds used for pedestrian improvements. The next strategic plan goal addressed with the capital improvement program is improved traffic flow, with a recommended budget of $6.2 million in FY21. $1.5 million of that total is dedicated to the street resurfacing or overlay program, with $500,000 provided from the general fund and $1 million from state tax revenues. This program was initiated in FY06, and since that time, over 160 miles of roadway has been resurfaced and funding has topped $19.6 million. Current capacity allows for about 16 miles of road to be resurfaced annually. Intersection spot improvements for FY21 includes new turn lanes at 2 intersections and curve improvements to another for a total budget of $200,000. The majority of the Traffic and Road CIP budget is committed to the Shive Lane Widening and Roundabout project. Its FY21 budget is nearly $4 million for completion of Phase 2 and Phase 3, which includes an added lane of traffic, a new roundabout, and the expansion of Shive Lane to Lovers Lane. The final Traffic and Roads project is the Downtown Improvement Project that is currently underway. The FY21 budget will be $500,000. Prior year funding has totaled over $5.6 million for Fountain Square Park improvements, the Downtown Wayfaring Project, and downtown improvements. Phase 1 of this project has been fully completed at a cost of $4.4 million to construct improvements from 10th Avenue to Spring Alley and around the downtown square. The project is currently in Phase 2, which covers streetscape improvements along several streets in the downtown core area. Phase 3 will extend streetscape improvements from the downtown area to the riverfront. The next strategic plan goal addressed by FY21 CIP is technology improvements, which has a total budget of $40,000. Several IT projects were initially proposed but have been delayed. However, the continuation of the server replacement upgrade program is being recommended. Also, 2 larger projects originally scheduled for the FY21 CIP were moved up to FY20 to replace employee desktop computers and upgrade Microsoft Office. The final strategic plan goal addressed with the capital improvement program is for facilities and equipment with a recommended budget of $1.5 million in FY21. Vehicle and equipment purchases and replacements total $433,000. This includes 4 new patrol vehicles for positions created in the FY20 budget and the replacement of a street sweeper in Public Works. Also, the fire department will receive its final year funding for extrication equipment and $53,000 for renovations and repairs to existing fire stations. Projects for the police department will total $301,000 and include the replacement of consoles and UPS equipment in the dispatch division and to convert an existing Dodge Sprinter into a mobile command post unit for the critical response team. The Public Works Department will receive funding totaling $285,000 to replace fencing at the Fleet Division, repair an existing vacuum truck, and make renovations at the Police Department. The Parks and Recreation Department will receive funding totaling $440,000 to replace HVAC units, make improvements to 2 parking lots, and improve the irrigation system at the Hobson Golf Course. More information on these projects is found in Appendix E. This chart shows the CIP funding history since FY 2011. Most notably, the general fund is contributing significantly less in FY21 compared to recent years, as shown by the dark blue area at the bottom. This decrease is in response to the impacts of COVID-19 on revenue projections and our ability to present a balanced general fund budget. Also notice that the total CIP funding, the top area in green, has primarily increased throughout the years, while the debt portion, shown in the middle in yellow, has steadily been decreasing to just under $10 million. This shows that the city has been using cash to fund CIP rather than issuing debt. In review, the FY21 Capital Improvement Program has a total budget of $20.6 million, which is $5.2 million or 21.6% less than last year. For the 7th consecutive year, the general fund balance is again not being used to fund CIP. Also, no new general fund debt is being recommended. The debt service attributed to CIP in FY21 totals over $9.7 million, but 42% or $4.1 million will be reimbursed by WKU or Warren County. The largest source of CIP funding is dedicated to roads and traffic improvement at over $6.2 million, while community livability comes in at $3.1 million. This slide highlights the debt funded by the general fund only, payments made by any city special revenue funds like the Fire Improvement Fund, or payments provided by outside entities such as Warren County or WKU are excluded. The FY20 actual column includes the payoff of the Series 2009 GO bonds, which were retired on schedule this year. Total general fund debt service spending this fiscal year is expected to be about $5 million, or 6.8% of total general fund expenditures. In FY21, the general fund spend for debt service is recommended to be just over $4.4 million, which is a one-year savings of $567,000, or 11.3% less, due to the retirement of the 2009 GO debt. The FY21 budget includes no new general fund debt, and none has been issued since 2008. All debt will be fully retired by 2033, with the exception of the ballpark bonds, which mature in 2038. The full funding picture of the city's debt service is shown here. The total FY21 budget from all funding sources is $9.7 million and includes the general fund, which covers 45.7% of the total budget, or $4.4 million, reimbursements from WKU and Warren County, which equal 42%, or about $4.1 million, and special revenue funds, which is the Fire Improvement Fund, total $12.3 or $1.2 million of the debt service. The city's outstanding debt history is shown here. Debt peaked in FY09 at over $148 million and has since decreased to an estimated $65.7 million at the end of FY20. This is a decrease of almost $82.3 million, or 55.6% in 11 years. This large decrease has been accomplished by making regularly scheduled principal and interest payments, avoiding any new bonded debt, and by retiring debt early when possible. Also important to note is of the city's estimated $65.7 million in estimated debt, $42 million, or 64.2%, was issued for other entities, including WKU, the Transpark, and for the ballpark. Debt issued by the city for the city is $23.5 million, or 35.8% of the outstanding debt at June 30th, 2020. Now switching gears to the FY21 General Fund balance. Fund balance is defined as the remaining equity balance after all budgeted expenditures have been made. The FY21 beginning fund balance is estimated to be $28 million and is based on staff revenue and expenditure forecast through June 30th. Committed fund balance is a reserve balance equal to 25% of the recommended FY21 General Fund revenue budget, or about $16.7 million. This is a decrease of over $1.3 million from the current balance due to the decreased FY21 revenue budget compared to FY20. The assigned fund balance of $3.5 million is an estimate of open purchase orders to be moved to FY21 and approved carry-forward projects remaining at June 30th. No use of fund balance is again recommended for FY21. The last use of general fund balance in the budget was in FY 2014. The unassigned fund balance of $7.8 million will be available in FY21 for any unbudgeted major purchases, infrastructure repairs, or other significant events. This balance is larger than usual to provide a safety net going into FY21 and offset any revenue volatility that may occur in the coming months. I'll now turn it back over to Katie Schaller-Ward to close the presentation.
The budget team would like to extend our appreciation to graphics designer Laura Harris for the creation of our budget graphics for the presentation design and the budget document. And I would like to extend a special recognition to Erin Ballou for her work with the development of the budget document. We try very hard each year to make it relevant and relatable for public consumption. As previously mentioned by the City Manager, the first reading of the budget is scheduled for the Board of Commissioners' June 16th regular meeting, along with other related items for consideration. And the anticipation of a special call meeting will also be scheduled to finalize the budget and other related documents and to approve agency appropriations. If you have any questions, as previously mentioned, please email those to the City Manager or myself or any member of the budget team. Thank you very much.